I'm sitting down with my friend Dawn today. Dawn and I met a little over 10 years ago when we used to do musical theater together, and I've always admired Dawn as a mom. Dawn has 4 children, and she's going to talk to us today about transitioning into that empty nest season of life that so many women, I'm sure, relate to, that I absolutely know nothing about yet. And so, Dawn, I'm so glad that you agreed to sit down and have this chat.
Thank you for asking me.
Oh, you're welcome. I was thinking about this yesterday. I think that when we first met, you were 38 years old, I'm pretty sure. And
wow,
I remember this because
I was going to say I was 39 now. You just blew my cover.
You are 39 now. With an almost empty nest. Of course you are. With your children, parenting, and lead such an active lifestyle. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, like you said, I do have 4 kids, and 3 are out of the nest, pretty much out of the nest, and 1 is still at home. He's a high schooler. And I was very lucky when they were young to be a stay-at-home mom. That was a conscious effort that my husband and I made. That was important to us, and while it sometimes caused, a lot of financial struggles, it was well worth anything in the end, looking back, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to do that. Now, while I was a stay-at-home mom, I did have part-time jobs that could fit in, to being home with the kids, and so that was good.
Ages are your children now?
Well, they're old enough that I have to really think about how old they are. So I have 1 daughter and 3 sons. My oldest is my daughter, and she's 28.
Wow.
She is on her own up in St. Louis. She has a master's in social work, and she's working at a school up there. And my next oldest is 25, and he's at grad school working on a PhD in chemistry. And then my next is 23, and he will finish his dual master's program in May and be looking for a job. And then I have a 15-year-old that just started high school. So I have like the 3, and then another one, which we were very blessed to have, and didn't plan it that way, but God had different plans.
Yes, that's great. So when your 3 oldest children were living at home, how did you prepare them to one day leave the nest and not always be dependent on you?
Well, I probably didn't do as well with them as I am now doing with my youngest one, because you live and you learn, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and while, I just am so thankful for that, because I was at home and because I could do more things for my kid than maybe a working mom could. And I wanted to. But I probably sheltered them maybe a little too much, in retrospect, looking back. And it was sort of playing catch up towards the end, like their senior year. I'm like, oh wow, like I need to teach them this, and they have to know how to do that. And not that that's always necessary. They
laundry sort of things.
Yeah, just the basic.
Repairs.
Because I'm a little bit of a control freak, and I was home, so you know what, I could do it.
Yes.
Yeah, laundry was a big thing. I was a little bit of control freak about that. So it was like, oh wait, they need to really know how to do this. And I got better as each one, left. I knew what they were going to need to know as far as the basic life things. But just in general, I don't think we really think about when our kids are young that our whole goal in life is to prepare them not to live with you forever.
Yes.
That is the hope.
Right. But to actually leave.
Yeah,
we're actually raising them to leave.
You really have to sort of, in a not so sad, that can be a sad thing when you're looking at a small toddler and you're thinking that. But that is your ultimate goal, that they have to be able to take care of themselves, and they're going to have a life of their own. And, it gets scarier as they get older, and you think, have I done everything I need to do? Have I taught them? And you can't. You just can't.
I'm sure.
You do the best, you plant some seeds, and you hope that basic set of values and things that you have given them and that you've modeled over 18 years or whenever they leave, that they can draw on that. You can't teach them everything. It's not possible, but you prepare them hopefully with good morals, good values, and a good work ethic, so they can go out and learn and do.
Yes.
And succeed.
I heard someone say one time that the verse that we all draw from in Proverbs that says train a child in the way he should go does not say train a child in the way he should stay, but train a child in the way he should go, and that they're going to go. One of my cousins always says, I'm not raising children, I'm raising them to be adults. I'm not raising them to stay children, but we're raising them to. So I'm like I always say, I'm raising little men.
Yeah, and in retrospect, if I had it to do over again, I would really pray for their. I know a lot of people that pray for like their future spouses.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really cool.
Yes,
it wasn't something I ever thought to do. I think that's awesome. But not just their spouses, like just their future. Like, I think the hardest thing for a young kid when they go off is, what do I want to be when I grow up? Mm-hmm. And to just pray about that discernment process when they're really young.
Yeah.
Because, we as moms and dads, we can see as our kids grow what their talents and where their leanings, and we may think, yeah, I could really see them doing well in this situation with this career or using these skills. But ultimately, it comes down to what is going to fulfill them, and even ultimately on top of that, where does God is going to use them? Yeah. So I would have thought more. When they're little, you're just on a day-to-day. Let's get through this day, and hopefully they're not too dirty and don't get hurt, and and they're fed and they sleep, and you're thinking about the basic needs. So I understand but as they get a little bit older, to really start thinking about that, that's what I would say to young moms.
Right.
One of the things, anyway.
Yes, that is excellent advice. How did your parenting role change as your oldest children began college?
Basically, it's just not that day-to-day, every day touching base with them. And
I can't imagine that right now.
I know you can't imagine that right now. But it slowly happens over the course of high school anyway. Once they get their license, there's that slow transition to, okay, I don't know where they're at. I don't have control over this situation. I may be able to get a hold of them by a phone, but that doesn't mean they're going to answer. I can try, but So there is that slow transition, and really, at least for my kids, they became so busy in their junior and senior years once they had their license. And that shift started to happen where my husband and I were not the primary focus of their day-to-day life. It started to shift slowly, so that was good. I mean, it wasn't just like a boom overnight, that their friends became, and their social life, and if they had a job, their work, and just getting ready for college, all of that became more of a central focus for them. And so there were large chunks of time where, besides my younger child, there weren't any of the older kids at home, or they would be in and out,
not everyone around the dinner table necessarily at the same time.
Not necessarily. And I mean, even though we tried to really focus on that, but literally, I might see them as they grabbed something to eat as they headed out the door at 7:00 in the morning, and I might not see them again until 10:00 at night, depending on what their schedule was. So that prepares you, but at least in my situation, and I think this is pretty common, when kids go away to college, you mostly are needed when it's a major ordeal.
Yes.
And it's not good.
So it's good to not be needed.
It's good to not have the phone ring at that point, really. I mean, as much as you want to talk to them and you want to touch base, it usually happens when they need something right now, or there's a crisis, or they need money, or
Yes.
or something like that. Usually, so it was very nice. If I had advice for kids that are leaving the nest, it'd be very nice just to call when there's nothing wrong and you don't
Just
need
call
money.
for fun.
Just call for fun.
That's great.
Now I do get that every once in a while from them now, but in college, not so much. It was, I don't know if this is my right major. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I'm really freaking out and I'm stressed because I have so much to do, or I have this test, or I didn't do well, or my boyfriend did this, or girlfriend. You know, it's just all of that drama, and that's normally what the call was. So it was always like, you get the call, you see them ringing, and you take a deep breath and you say a little prayer, and you're like, okay, I'm on. Now I have to be mom. And otherwise, they don't want me.
Right, your counselor's here.
Yes, and that's really what I sort of felt like a counselor for, quite a while. I'm moving out of that, and I'm moving a little bit more even, because they've been gone for a while. They're in grad school now, or completely on their own.
Joys have you experienced since some of your older children have flown the nest and become adults?
It'd be really easy. I mean, obviously the big major things, when they graduate from college and they get that first job and all that stuff. But, really, it's the small, tiny things that bring me the most joy. Like the little seeds that you start to see sort of creeping up. And, like, I'll give you an example. Drew, who's 23, is at Ohio right now, working on his master's, and he knows I'm very health conscious. We've tried to instill, eating well and exercising, and he's always been he's a sports management degree, exercise science. He's always been about that, but true to form, sometimes when you have a degree in that, sometimes you know more than your parents. You don't really want to listen to parental advice on that. Like, Mom, really, I know this stuff, or you're wrong. That's not what I learned in college. And his big thing now, and he has, going back to the other question, he calls just to touch base, and there's nothing wrong, and he doesn't want money. And his thing is, when he goes to Aldi, because I'm a big Aldi shopper.
Oh, yes.
When he goes to Aldi, he thinks of me because he's going to get fruits and vegetables, and he's out of fruits and vegetables, and it's something that small that he'll be like, hey, Mom. And now I know his routine. You're on the way to Aldi, aren't you? Yeah, I'm out of fruits and vegetables. It made me think of you. I'm calling. Like, it's those tiny little things really like neat. that you're like, wow, I influence them.
Yes.
Or,
he thinks of you when he thinks of fruits and veggies.
I know.
That's great.
And isn't that so silly? But I think that it's the small little things. Or like when my daughter, I shared a lot of commonality with my daughter. You did musical theater with her and dance, and she'll send me something she sees musical theater related or something, and I knew you would like this. I was thinking, it's those things.
Yes, my mom and I shared that as well.
Yeah,
with her being a theater major.
Tiny things that, and the big things are joys, but. Does it sound full of myself? Well, I expected them to graduate from college. I expected them to be successful. I knew that.
As a mom of little ones, I think it sounds wonderful, like a huge accomplishment for your child to think of you when he's buying fruits and vegetables. But, I think that sounds like a huge ordeal.
You know, and as far as, that's one thing. And then there's spiritual life, because this is one thing I remember when I was in college. The one thing that sticks out to me about growing up, it's this, I don't know, but when my faith became my own and not an offshoot of my parents.
Yes.
I remember, because
me too.
I grew up Methodist, so the Methodists aren't very good, as some other religions, of having on-campus kind of, things. And so I didn't have that. I didn't belong to a group of other Christian students on campus. I got up on Sunday and I went off campus to a church that I knew no one,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times it was just all old people. Unfortunately, there wasn't
Because it was
even
important to you.
Well, it was important, and then I was like, I've got to figure this out. Like, I've got to figure out what is important to me, unrelated to my parents.
Yes. I remember
And
that
it
too.
has to become my relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know a lot of people are much, much better at that, and they get that when they're in high school or junior high, or it becomes their own personal relationship. And I think there was some of that,
but college is when you really
college
leave
is
home.
really,
Yes,
because,
it was the same for me.
and my kids were always like, when we were raising our kids, it's like, look, you want to go out on Saturday night, then you have to be in church on Sunday. That just was not, it was a
Right.
given, you know.
Yes.
And it wasn't like we were
Right.
like that. That's
But just like
that's
don't
what
get
our
so
that's
tired
what
that
our
you'll neglect tomorrow.
that is
Right.
what was important to us.
Yeah.
So when that is not over your head anymore, and you don't have mom and dad saying, you know what, it's Sunday, you're gonna have to get up no matter what you did on Saturday night, and it's important to go to church. Are they gonna make that decision? And I can't say that they always did.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't. But when you see the glimpses of it's becoming important to them in their own.
What is your encouragement and your advice to women, maybe in my season, raising little children who will one day leave the nest, and in your season, who have children who are leaving the nest? What is your encouragement and your advice for those women?
Well, I don't know if this is encouragement, but it will happen much quicker than you believe. I remember bringing home my first newborn and thinking, and purposely thinking, like, about when they would do certain things, milestones, and I thought, I couldn't even wrap my mind around it.
Yes.
It seems so far in the future to me that I just couldn't figure it out. It will happen a lot faster than you believe, especially, I think, once they start school. I think that those first few years, those seem to be the longest, because it's so hands-on and it's so draining,
and then it like speeds up.
and then
I'm
it
starting
does
to see
speed
that.
up. It does speed up once they get in elementary school,
Yes.
and it really speeds up when they get in high school and
Woo.
college.
When our oldest son turned 6, we said, "Oh, before he is 18 years old, we only do this 2 more times,
Yeah.
2 more times of what we just did."
I
You know,
I
and it's just unbelievable.
I mean, so that's an obvious, and you can't really, you don't believe it when you're your age, but you know, the two things I would say, and the first one is what my mom said to me, and I remember her saying it to me when I got married, even before I think I had kids. God is first, your husband is second, and your kids are last.
Yes.
And I see that very jumbled up in a lot of people's lives, and I think it causes a lot of problem. I mean, not to even go into the God first, but let's just talk about the husband second and the kids third.
Yes, because that seems to be one that people really flip-flop.
I really, yes, and people don't understand. They're like, well, how can that be? You know, my husband is a grown man and he can take care of himself. Well, we hope. You know, he was raised right, so he can take care of himself.
It's not about that. Yeah.
But
that
your kids
relationship
require so much of your time. So we're not talking necessarily about time requirements, but your priority is first to your husband in that relationship after God. Because if you don't, you're not giving your kid the very essence of what relationship is. If you don't have a good relationship with your spouse, and make the time. That you don't have to make the time for kids when they're little. They demand the time.
Yes.
It just is required, and you have to do it.
But you have to
So
make the time
you
with your
have to
husband.
purposely
That's
make
right.
the time with your husband, and so that needs to be first, and the kids need to see that. I can't give you a good example off the top of my head, but there were times when, no, I would say to kids, no, your father and I, or whatever it was,
We're talking right now.
Yeah,
You have to wait. We
yeah,
had a lot of that.
that's a good one, because yes, we are talking.
Right.
You need to chill.
Yeah.
I have given
We'll talk
you
to you
time.
in just a minute. Yeah.
So that's one. The other thing is time for yourself as a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And not just time, but also creating some things, whether that be an interest or friendships or a job that you can fall back on when you do have the time and your kids are gone. Because if A, you have not fostered that relationship with your spouse, and B, you have not worked on yourself and created a separate person away from your kids.
Yes.
Those are the women that have the hardest time when their kids leave, and I've seen it time after time. They have wrapped their whole life around their children and their children's activities to the demise of everything else. So then when those kids leave and there's nothing left. There's not a relationship with your husband because you haven't nurtured it, or now if you think you're gonna, I'm looking forward to, and we're in that sort of stage of, expanding and re-nurture. There's more to my relationship with my spouse, and I'm going to get to spend more time doing that.
Now the emptiness is here, but you nurtured it.
But I nurtured it, and it's there. It's not dead. It wasn't dead all the way through my kids.
Because 20-something years is a long time to not work on a relationship with someone, and then to hope that that's there still.
You see a lot of relationships, marriages break up. They finally get a divorce when the kids are gone, and they realize they don't have anything in common. They don't know how to communicate.
It was only the children.
They have nothing. And now they've raised the kids. Their only purpose of being together was raising those kids. There wasn't a love there. And so then sadly, it's just like they realize we don't have anything, and now we're spending all this time together and we don't get along. And it's quite obvious now that the kids aren't here and there's nobody else to talk to. And having a mission, whatever you want to call it, a mission, a purpose, something that personally fulfills you outside of that relationship with your husband too, that gets you up and gets you going every morning. Somehow, as busy as you are as a mom, find some things like that that you can completely fall back on when they're gone, and to fill your time and to fill that need to be a nurturer and to give back. So
I think that's great advice, that we need to fulfill our own hobbies and things like that we need to do something that will keep us thriving as an individual, aside from being just a mom, Well,
if our whole focus is on our kids, that's not teaching our kids.
It's teaching them a me-centeredness.
It's a very all about me. I am the center of mom and dad's universe, and that is not a good place.
And we don't want to raise those adults.
No,
we don't want to raise me-centered adults.
No,
who think that the universe revolves around them alone.
Yeah, because we see a lot of those, and they aren't fun adults to be around.
They're not. And then also to foster that relationship with your husband, even when the children are little and as they're growing and as they're in activities, that your only commonality isn't the children themselves. So that when the children are gone, you still have that relationship. Someone gave me that advice as well, and I've tried to keep that in mind, that God is first, and then my husband, and then children. And so I'm so glad to hear that affirmed by you, that that's actually working out in someone else's life too.
Well, I am not completely empty nester yet, but I see that my husband and I have a whole lot more time alone, and by gosh, we better like each other, because now it would be really hard now to just turn on the TV at night and he sit in his chair and I sit on the couch and there we are.
Right.
That would be a very lonely existence, and it wouldn't be what I would want. So if that's not what you want, you have to work on it now.
Much for sitting down and giving us this encouragement and this wisdom, for just transitioning into the empty nest. I know you're 3/4 empty nester now.
3/4
of the way there. And so thanks for giving us a glimpse into that season of life. I so appreciate it. Oh, this was a good interview.
I see the work of your hands, galaxies spinning